This is Duke Dennis. You might know him as a streamer or in general one of the world's biggest content creators.
Oh, I did a backflip.
You might also recognize him for being a part of a group called AMP, where over the years he has had a lot of opportunities to prove that he is a really good football player. One year he actually had a game where he came up with 3 pick sixes, and y'all won't believe who the quarterback was. But with how great Duke has been playing flag throughout the years, it's gotta make you wonder what his potential could be if he played real football. So today I am putting Duke Dennis into College Football 25. Let's see how he turns out if he decided to play football, as we'll follow him on his road to glory. Now, growing up, Duke Dennis has always been very athletic, and he played all over the field, so it took him a while to figure out what position he wanted to play, but ultimately he would come to a decision.
Duke Dennis, wide receiver for AMP. Be ready to get snagged on out there, man. I ain't gonna cap.
And based off his athleticism alone, a lot of teams in the country wanted to have him on the team. But growing up in the South Carolina area, he really wanted to stay close to home. But he also wanted to go to a school where he felt like he could play and win. So when it came to Duke Dennis's college decision, he decided to sign with North Carolina.
I'm the talk of the city, you heard something different, it's getting ridiculous. Whole time I be minding my business, you gripping my dick while we taking a picture.
Now, when Duke got to campus, the coaches told him that they did not have number 34, but he ended up choosing to wear number 10 because he always keeps it 10 toes down. That's just the type of guy he is, you know. He even keeps it 10 toes down on the sideline because he's trying to prepare for the NFL. But after taking a look at this Tar Heel roster, Duke notices that they got some good players like Omarion Hampton, and the rest of the roster is also filled with some pretty solid players as well. So Duke feels like he really has a great opportunity to make an impact here, and he's ready to get into his first game of college football against Minnesota.
You know what I'm saying? Things of that nature, bro.
Turns out they got Duke coming out in the field early on in this game. They got him immediately starting at wide receiver 2, and it didn't take long for him to come up with his first career catch on his third down, helping to move the sticks for his team, and this drive actually went all the way into opposing territory. Where on another third down, Duke comes up with his second catch, but unfortunately North Carolina is forced to settle for 3. Now, as this game went on, Duke Dennis was earning more opportunities, and he was showing exactly why he needed to get them by snagging this ball out the air in double coverage. This dude was already making a lot of big plays. But even though he was playing well, things wouldn't always go North Carolina's way, as the quarterback throws his first pick of the season, and if it weren't for Duke Dennis, it was probably going all the way back to the crib. But now down by multiple possessions, North Carolina had guys like Omarion Hampton showing up big, doing a great job to move the chains, but with less than 50 seconds left in the half, North Carolina needs somebody to make a play downfield ASAP. And after Duke Dennis runs this post route, it turns out it'd be him, as he makes the catch and dives across the goal line for his first career touchdown in college football. An incredible play made over the middle, and I have a feeling that he's only just getting started. Now, going into the second half, there were a lot of other players to help contribute and get North Carolina a field goal in their opening drive. But as this game was coming down to the wire, it was Duke Dennis who was trying to be the one to make the play and get his team in position for a comeback victory. He even had a play where he didn't create that much separation, but still went up and snagged this ball off that little boy's head like it was no problem. Just pretty much doing whatever he wanted out there. And it didn't take long for Omarion Hampton to get in the end zone for a touchdown and give North Carolina an opportunity to tie this game up, which Duke Dennis had done the honors of by bringing us to 21 points apiece. But with Minnesota having gone downfield and scored another touchdown, and the North Carolina quarterback throwing an interception in the final moments, Duke Dennis was set to take a loss in his first game of his career, as North Carolina goes on to lose this game 28-21. But this was a game where Duke Dennis had showed out and had 15 receptions for 197 yards. Especially for a freshman, that's a lot of work to be putting in. But I guess Duke Dennis was the type of guy who was up for it, because even after the game, he's out there working on trying to be a better player. But when he wasn't doing that, he made sure to head over to D-Block and spend some time with his people.
It's Castanet game, by the way.
What the fuck?
Now, going into the following week, Duke is hoping to have another good game, but hopefully come away with the victory this time. But in order to do that, they'll have to take on an in-state opponent, as North Carolina is set to face off against Charlotte. Now, it didn't take long for people to see that Duke had some serious athletic ability. He could run routes like the best receivers in the country, but he could also jump right over you if you tried to tackle him. This dude was out here jumping so high he could have done a backflip over them. And you could tell that Duke was hyped up early on in this game. He was becoming the one receiver on this North Carolina roster that was not afraid of making those catches over the middle. And because of that, it makes sense that he's already built up a lot of trust with his quarterback as they connect for Duke Dennis' second touchdown of his college career already in his second game. He helped North Carolina cap off their opening drive for the touchdown, and he was hoping he could keep that momentum going. Unfortunately, though, throughout the rest of this first half, Charlotte started to really clamp down on him. But it wasn't just him they were clamping down on, because they would clamp down on that quarterback in the end zone for a safety. And now after halftime, North Carolina found himself down by 2 possessions, but it seems to be all good though after Duke says, "Wang!" Snagged that shit out the sky, and now he is on his way towards the end zone, crossing over the goal line for a touchdown to make it now a 1-possession game, and North Carolina is back in business, baby. On the next drive, Duke is still doing his best to try to get his team in scoring position, but they only come away with 3 points until they get the ball back in the 4th quarter. Where thanks to the receiver on the opposite side, North Carolina was getting themselves in pretty good position to take the lead, and it would only be a few plays later on 4th and goal, where Duke got himself wide open and came up with the catch to take the lead. But it would pretty much be all for nothing because this game would end up in overtime. Luckily though, once again his teammate was coming up with a big play on the opposite side, getting North Carolina across the goal line for another score to send us into another overtime. And then on this play, Duke knows that he has the back shoulder open, but the quarterback just doesn't get the ball to him and it ends up getting picked off. And not just that, because it goes all the way to the crib for a touchdown to finally put an end to this game. And one of the cameras actually picked up some audio of Duke Dennis not so happy after the play.
Boy, ain't no way, boy. 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 Boy, ain't no fucking way, boy. Ain't no way, boy.
Duke Dennis had another great game, especially for being only a freshman. Over 150 yards and this time 3 touchdowns. He was playing incredible individually, but the rest of his team definitely needed to step it up. Starting off 0-2 is definitely not how Duke Dennis thought he would start college. But he has the chance to bounce back in his next game, as he's about to face off against the UGF Pandas. Now, like the previous game, Duke is showing early in this one that he is not afraid to make those big catches over the middle. Somebody's going to have to do it, and he seems to be the guy who's doing it consistently. And he knows that he'll be rewarded for it like he is on this play, as he finds his way across the goal line for his first touchdown of the day, putting the first points on the board for either team, but the UGF Pandas tie it up at 7. And before they head into the second half, they want to take some shots deep to Duke Dennis, but this one actually ends up picked off. Luckily, this wasn't something that turned into any points for the Pandas, so by the second half, Duke was back to running over the middle saying, "Hey," and picking up first downs for his team. But he loved that he had other players on this offense that would often step up and come up with huge plays of their own. This one was tied up at 14 after North Carolina had been struggling largely throughout the game. But the biggest bright spot for this offense throughout the entire second half was and still is Duke Dennis, as he comes up with a catch on the sideline that helps bring his team well past midfield, putting his team in excellent position for another score. And on this play, Duke is just kind of hoping that his quarterback would get him the ball eventually. Duke would finally not only make the catch, but bring his team down to the 1-yard line, setting them up with a chance to throw the screen pass. And with Duke Dennis blocking, they were able to get across the goal line for a score to tie this game up at 21, ultimately sending another game for North Carolina into overtime. And after the Pandas fail to score on their opening drive, this catch from Duke Dennis in the end zone will be enough to finally put an end to this game and give Duke his first win as a college football player. North Carolina goes on to win 28-21 in a game where Duke Dennis led the way with 15 receptions, over 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Man, Duke had finally won a game. He was really feeling himself. So when his friend Davo Amigo said he wanted to go out and get some girls, Duke had said, "Shit, I'm gonna get their number with a flip phone."
I just bought it, so I gotta work this motherfucker. Yeah.
Really, nigga?
Now at this point, the coaches were really starting to trust Duke. So much so that they let him have a chance to be the number 1. But Duke was definitely taking advantage of the opportunity that he had as soon as he got to practice. He went out there and proved that he was going to be a major weapon for this offense going forward, and he earned himself the right to be the wide receiver 1 for the remainder of the season. And the great thing for the Tar Heels is that he was working on getting better, and he was really only just getting started. So for him to already be winning National Offensive Players of the Week, it was hard not to think that Duke Dennis had a bright future ahead of him. And if he keeps playing like that, North Carolina might be able to win their next game against James Madison. Now on the very first play in this game, Duke is already doing some crazy stuff. Catch the ball, spin the defender out from 10 yards away, and now all of a sudden he's picking up a 30-yard gain. And if he thought it wasn't enough for Duke to help bring them past midfield, he would also be a guy to come up with a diving catch to bring North Carolina in goal-to-goal territory, where a couple plays later, Omarion Hampton is able to get across the goal line for a score to make this a 7-0 lead. And throughout this game, North Carolina was definitely moving the sticks consistently, but eventually this James Madison defense would start to step up and force a few turnovers. In the second half, though, that same defense would truly see just how hard it was to guard Duke Dennis, as he was helping to bring his team down the field once again. And when they got down to the goal line, Omarion Hampton finished off yet another drive that was already doing enough to put this game away, as North Carolina goes on to finish off James Madison 21-15. And it was another game where Duke had went for over 100 yards, and even though he got no touchdowns, he was still getting a lot of attention off the field, in more ways than you might think. Because after the game, Duke got a text from a guy who was mad that his girlfriend took a picture with him, but Duke made it pretty clear that he didn't want no problem.
Hey, look, I don't want no problems with nobody. I don't want no problems. I don't want to beef with nobody. I don't want drama. I don't want smoke.
But now it's time for Duke to head into an ACC matchup on the road, as he and North Carolina are set to face off against Duke. And it did not take long for Duke to make an impact on this game. After not scoring at all last week, he takes this jet sweep across the goal line to make this 7-0. But it didn't look like Duke had any plans to stop there. He was out there catching screen passes in the backfield that could have been stopped for a loss and turning them into first downs. And it wouldn't be long after that where the entire stadium saw that Duke was going to have a hard time guarding Duke, as he comes up with his second score still within the first half of this game, and it still doesn't look like he's done. Because North Carolina is out here trying to take a shot deep to Duke before half, and would you be surprised that even in double coverage, he still comes down with the ball. He continued to make plays all throughout this game, leading it to be 20-7 in the fourth quarter, where on this play, seemingly for the first time all night, things were not going North Carolina's way. But in the end, it didn't seem to matter, because North Carolina would go on to finish this game off 20-14. And Duke Dennis had led the way with 9 receptions, 162 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This Negro right here was balling, and he earned himself another ACC Offensive Player of the Week. The thing about Duke, though, is that he was a lot more concerned about the possibility of North Carolina making the playoffs after starting the season 0-2. But by the looks of the schedule, he knows that they might have a good chance if he can continue to win games. So he knows they have to do their best not to take another loss anytime soon, and definitely not in their next game against Pittsburgh. Now, unfortunately, North Carolina was down 17 early on in this game, but Duke Dennis was out here saying "skr," and then immediately making a catch on the sideline and bringing his team all the way upfield inside the 5 right before halftime for a field goal. But he knew after halftime he was going to try his best to get his team a touchdown, and after getting wide open right here, he had done exactly that, as he had now made this a one-possession game going into the rest of the half. This guy Duke was determined to be the guy to consistently get his team downfield, as he was always calling for the ball, and oftentimes he was coming up with a huge catch like this. It was absolutely insane the way that he was embarrassing a lot of these DBs, whether it be from him snagging the ball right off their head or just completely routing them up and getting himself wide open for another touchdown on his day. They hadn't even hit the fourth quarter yet, and this dude had 13 receptions for 243 yards. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't look like this game was about to end well after the North Carolina quarterback throws a pick, and under 2 minutes left, this game is likely to be over, but somehow the defense comes up with a stop, allowing for Duke Dennis an opportunity to just speed boost past these defenders, and all of a sudden he is off to the races with less than 1 minute left for a touchdown to send this game into overtime. And after Pittsburgh fails to score a touchdown on their second possession, Omarion Hampton will be the guy to get in the end zone later on to put this game away, as North Carolina goes on to close this one out 37-34. And Duke Dennis was out here putting up an incredible stat line with 17 receptions, 340 yards, and 3 touchdowns. A stat line that North Carolina has never seen throughout their entire history, so it's no surprise that he goes on to win National Offensive Player of the Week. He had worked hard all throughout his life to become an athletic specimen, but now that he had had football in his life and got real comfortable with it, he was looking forward to showing the entire country that he might be the best player in the nation. He came out here in a game against Georgia Tech, and it seems like they forgot to guard him, because he's easily able to go downfield and snag this out the air before being pushed across the goal line for a touchdown. And he was definitely getting this game started off right, but he was not done yet, because later on he was barely creating separation from this DB off the line of scrimmage, but somehow he was still not only able to make the catch, but before you knew it, this dude was racing towards the end zone and diving across the goal line for a touchdown. And this actually turned out to be the score to effectively put an end to this game, as North Carolina goes on to win 21-14, and it's hard to say that they could have done it without Duke Dennis. He was starting to become an icon around the country, and it was hard not to see why after he had already broken multiple North Carolina single-season records. Duke Dennis had been pretty much dominating since the moment he stepped on campus, and with the rest of North Carolina's schedule looking kind of weak, it was hard not to think that he was just going to keep it up, and he definitely did in this game against Virginia Tech. He came out here and got a touchdown early on, although he did get a little bit of help from the ref. Turns out Duke had just rizzed this lady up without saying a single word. So despite the fact that he had quite literally stepped out of bounds on his touchdown, she did not give a damn. He could do whatever he wants. And he was pretty much doing whatever he wanted throughout this first half. He was somehow able to come back to the ball and make this catch before throwing off this defender and getting down inside the 5-yard line. And only a play later, he caught the ball on the screen pass and got in for the easiest touchdown of his life. But even when he wasn't scoring touchdowns, he was often going downfield and coming up with a big catch And this one in the fourth quarter would actually be enough to put this game away, as North Carolina was coming up with another victory on their season, 20-14. And with Duke Dennis going for yet another 100-yard game, it was easy to see why he was starting to get a lot of recognition, and even came out here and signed his first NIL deal. And Duke was already prepared for all these girls that was going to try to get his attention now.
I don't believe in, zodiac signs. Bitch text me 444, thinking about you. I say, I pick it up from Wendy's on my way home. Type shit.
Now Duke was just out here staying locked in because he knew that he still had quite a few games left to close the season out. And in this game against Florida State, he was absolutely frying these boys up like some Popeye's chicken. He got in for a touchdown early on, and it seemed like this defense was sleeping on Duke Dennis. Because on the following drive, he would run that same exact route, but this time he would have to dive, get smacked in the air, and still score a touchdown. Just absolutely embarrassing these dudes, but oh no, he was not finished. Because later on in the fourth quarter, he's able to get by his defender, stack on top of him, and just like that, he was coming up with his third and easiest touchdown of the game. And he let the whole crowd know that he plans to come for that Heisman Trophy. North Carolina was coming up with another victory, 21-10. And this was a game where even though Duke had 3 touchdowns, he only had 5 receptions. So he was clearly making the most out of all the opportunities that he had, and he was bound to get more opportunities at the rate that he was improving. And hopefully all of his improvements could help his team win their next game, as they're set to face off against Wake Forest. Now this game had actually started off pretty horribly for North Carolina. Quarterback was getting sacked in the backfield for a safety, and after going down 5-0, they would eventually find themselves down by 2 possessions in the second half. But you see, one thing about Duke though is that he was not about to sit up there and get beat up without fighting back. So he was doing his best to help his team try to get back in this game. And after being put over to the right side, he was able to actually read this defense, realize nobody was guarding the corner, and get himself open for a touchdown. Just barely making it over the goal line as he helped flip the first points on the board for his team. And then later on, with around 1 minute left, he would also be the one to make the catch before falling across the goal line for another score that would not only take a lead but put an end to this game, as somehow North Carolina escaped with another victory, 13-12. And it was off the back of Duke Dennis's 4 receptions for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Duke had been playing incredible even with limited opportunities, but Duke knew that with a couple games left in this season, he had to stay locked in. Duke came out here in a game against Boston College where he not only routed this cornerback up, but snagged the ball off his back and made his way towards the goal line before diving across for a touchdown. He went out there and probably had one of the best plays that he's had all season, but after being down later on in this game, he would try to top it by snagging his ball off the DB's head, getting in for a touchdown that would set North Carolina on a path to win this game. 21-17 in a game where Duke had put up 121 and 2 touchdowns. The fact that Duke had improved so much throughout the season was astounding. But it would all be for the purpose of playing in games like this next one, because in the last game of the season, North Carolina is facing off against their toughest opponent, an in-state rival and 25th ranked NC State. Now this game was not at all getting started off the way that it usually gets started off as, because this North Carolina quarterback throws a pick early on in this game that goes back for 6. So probably not the way that they expected things to go. But later on, Duke is exploiting this cover 2 and finding himself wide open, coming up with a catch on the sideline for a big play downfield where he is barely outrunning this defender for a touchdown, getting across the goal line towards the end of the first quarter to tie this one up at 7. And after the team was able to get themselves inside the red zone on the following drive, Duke Dennis is once again getting around the edge for another score to tie this game up. But the crazy thing is that it didn't seem like he was anywhere near done yet, because North Carolina's defense kept giving them opportunities, and Duke was out here coming up with plays even when he didn't mean to, like this pass he caught in the end zone that bounced off his back, a score that actually took the lead for North Carolina before NC State took it right back. But with time running down in the fourth quarter, North Carolina had some other guys who came up big and allowed them to tie this one up and send it into overtime, where after an exchange of field goals, this screen pass to Duke that was meant to maybe pick up a first down actually gets him across the goal line for 6. A score that gives North Carolina a big lead in a big moment, but unfortunately they couldn't extend it to 8 points after failing this 2-point conversion. And after NC State not only goes down the field, scores a touchdown, but gets the 2-point conversion, this game is over. And North Carolina loses to an in-state rival by 2 points, potentially putting an end to their playoff hopes. And with it being a game that Duke had played extremely well, putting up over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, but on the bright side, it turns out that North Carolina would have a chance to play in the ACC Championship, which likely means that if they do win, they will get a chance to go to the playoffs. So now going into the bye week before, Duke decides that he's just going to go hang out with his friends, maybe play some games or, tell some stories.
I ain't want no problems because the situation I was in, I'm sitting here butt ass naked and he outside, he don't know what's going on. He coming in and see me. My ass is grass. You know what I'm saying?
Is this?
Huh?
What story time is this?
When I fucked a nigga.
What?
But now that we are in the ACC championship game, there's some real work to be done here, and Duke is doing it early, coming up with a long touchdown in the first quarter to make this 7-0. And even though North Carolina was somehow giving up their third safety of the season, believe it or not, that would turn out to be all good. Because even with Clemson coming out there and taking the lead, they still have to go out there on defense and guard Duke Dennis, who seemed to make a habit of making snagging footballs off of people's heads to look so easy that he had to make sure that he wasn't tripping. Because with Clemson easily being the best team he's played all year, he's surprised that he's already in the end zone for his second touchdown. And for whatever reason in this game, there were a lot of times where they would just forget to guard Duke. Because before it even hit halftime, he was coming up with his third touchdown reception of the day, something that I believe he hadn't done all year. And yeah, he was ready for that Heisman. He was trying to be the first freshman receiver to win the award, and he was showing exactly why he deserved to win it by making the most out of plays like this, bringing his team deep past midfield when they needed it most. But with North Carolina failing to convert on this third down, they leave the door open for Clemson to go downfield and score a touchdown to tie this game up. Luckily though, they do not, and North Carolina barely squeaks out yet another victory. 24-22 against their toughest opponent all season, and it absolutely could not have been done without the player of the game, Duke Dennis, who caught 15 receptions for over 300 yards and 3 huge touchdowns, doing enough to earn North Carolina an ACC championship and another Offensive Player of the Week. But now that it's the end of the season, there are some awards to be given out, and Duke Dennis is ready to get that hot. So, it turns out that Duke Dennis did not win the Heisman, and he was not very happy about it.
Boy, ain't no fucking way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy.
On the bright side, he did firmly establish himself as the best receiver in the country, and he won a bunch of other awards that would show that that was true. But even though Duke did not win the Heisman, he did not think the bad news was going to get any worse, because it turns out that North Carolina will miss out on the college football playoffs. And even though they literally beat Clemson and became the Big Ten champions, Clemson will actually be the team to take their spot even though they have the same record. So Duke Dennis as a freshman not only misses out on the playoffs, but he misses out on the chance to win a Heisman Trophy. But man, Duke ain't the type to just sit here and stop working. He felt really good about what he had done all season, and even though things are not going to end the way that he wanted it to, he knows that he still has another chance to go out there and still prove that he's the best player in the country. So against North Texas, that's exactly what he's gonna do. This game has started off pretty similar to other ones throughout the year, with Duke snagging his ball out the air, picking up a first down for his team before just a play later, he gets in the end zone for a touchdown to get the scoring started in this game. He was going to make sure that he goes out there and has the best game of his season. So before the first quarter even ends, he goes out there and says, "Wang," snags his ball off this guy's helmet for a touchdown, giving North Carolina the 14-7 lead. But he was not even close to done, because before the end of the first half, he lines up and speeds past the entire defense, getting over the top for his third touchdown of the game already. But it still seemed like he had a lot more work to put in, because he came out here in the third quarter running this out route, and he got butt naked ass wide open for another touchdown, making it 4 for the day. But if you thought he was just going to finish right there with it still being a whole quarter left, you would be smoking fucking bath salts. Because this guy Duke Dennis was on a rampage, man. I mean, he was clearly upset that he didn't win that Heisman. He was out there getting in for another touchdown, and at this point, I don't even know how many he had. But I do know that at this point, it felt like he was really starting to assert his dominance. But that feeling would definitely turn to fact after he takes this jet pass and just weaves past the entire defense, creating a lane for another score on his day. And after coming out here and having a performance for the ages, Duke Dennis had done enough to help secure his team another victory, this time in a bowl game in the last game of the season, as they go on to win 56-28. And y'all better buckle up when you see this stat line, because Duke had 27 receptions, over 500 yards, and 8 touchdowns. 3 national single game records broken in one game. And as far as the season stats, it really wasn't even close. Duke had a way better season at his position than Cade Klubnik did at his. But if we're going to be fair, Cade Klubnik did eventually lead Clemson to a national championship victory. So props definitely given where it's due. And 56 touchdowns to 3 interceptions is pretty crazy, so alright, you got it. But with that being said, Duke Dennis did break multiple single season records, with receiving touchdowns and receiving yards, and I don't think anybody's breaking them anytime soon, unless it's him. And as far as next year, Duke has no clue on whether or not he wants to stay here or hit the transfer portal. Shit, maybe he'll even go to Clemson. Either way, there is definitely a decision that needs to be made, but that decision will be left up to you guys. Whether you want to see Duke Dennis stay at North Carolina or transfer to another school, just be sure to comment down below and let me know. And if you want to see a part 2, get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. But also be sure to comment down below who else you guys want to see next, and check out some of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope you all have an amazing week, and other than that, I'm gonna catch you guys next time.